Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Imaginal Talk series on learning and skill development. There are some more participants still joining in, hence we will wait for 5 more minutes. We'll start the session at 6:05, please. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Vayati Systems and Research. I'm Nidhi, Senior Associate and your host for the talk. After a successful 7 months of running Imaginal Talk series on learning and skills development, we are back with the eighth episode. This is a discourse that requires all of us to be involved and engaged in. It has the power to shape ourselves and those around us and our collective future. Before we begin today's session, I would like to inform that we have posted a link in the chat box and we would like to hear your feedback at the end of the session. To initiate the conversation, we have two distinguished personalities, Dr. Mona N. Shah, founder and director, Vayati Systems and Research, and author of Millennials Poised to Lead, a bestseller book on Amazon. In conversation with Mr. Anup Matthew, Senior Vice President and Business Head, Godrej Construction, Godrej and Boys Manufacturing Company Limited, India. I am sure this evening will not only be an interesting one, but also packed with many takeaways. Without further delay, let's proceed to hear today's guest on Imaginal Talk. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry. A hearty welcome to all those who have joined our 8th live episode of the Imaginal series this year. Let me introduce you quickly to the idea behind the series. It is conceived to offer very personal perspectives about the role learning has played in the lives of our guests. As an academic, I see firsthand the whole idea of learning is undergoing a radical change. There is so much that is thought, spoken, written, experienced, questioned, and also planned in policies that it has left the whole world in a conundrum about its relevance or its utility. The talk series is dedicated to deconstructing and understanding this very change. Many me about why we've named the talk Imaginal. What is Imaginal? Imaginal is the last stage after which the caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. We also know it as the pupa stage. The entire metamorphosis of the butterfly is an almost magical process, rarely found elsewhere in the world of living species. For one, the different forms in the metamorphosis are distinct from one another, so distinct that while in a particular stage, it would be difficult to imagine how the next form would appear for those who see it from the outside. And do you know, this stage wise development is completely lost on the butterfly too. It does not remember how it looked when it was a caterpillar, and neither does the caterpillar know how it would look in future when it becomes a butterfly. Miraculous, isn't it? In all my 3 decades and more as a professor, and a strong proponent of all things educational, I frequently come across the lines being repeated from learners. We never really learn anything while in school. It's only when we experience the hard knock of reality that we really learn. Much like the caterpillar, which has no clue what it will become in the future, most of us go through learning not knowing how exactly it had been designed to help us grow into beautiful and useful individuals in society. Interestingly, though, this view on learning, held by multitudes, has always been in contradiction to another reality. The reality being that the desire to enroll in good colleges and acquire degrees is equally appealing. In some cultures, the parents are ready to sacrifice their present for the future of their wards. There are countless cases of leaders who have been supported to invest in their ambitions. How many of us are aware of the story of architect Prem Nath, who was born to a construction worker who went on to become one of India's most feted architects and in the top 100 architects of the world? Elsewhere around the globe, there are stories of billionaire developers like Cheng Liang Pen, whose mother worked in 2 shifts in a Malaysian rubber plantation, or even Manuel Velar, whose mother sold fish and shrimp from baskets in the poorest quarter in Metro Manila, who have now carved their way to the top of construction and development pyramid the very hard way. At another level, we are also aware that there is no better comparative advantage than that of a highly skilled human resource for any country to do well at the global scale. So, why educate oneself if it lacks clarity, or is either forgotten, or is seen as irrelevant at a later date? Why does formal education continue to command more premium? Instead of only relying on academic degrees, can continuous competency and skilling be the way forward? So, today I shall ask my guest and viewers why these contradictions. We present to you a number of guests from diverse backgrounds over the past year who will express their ideas on learning with anecdotes from their personal journeys. They will share how learning helped, or for that matter, did not help in their own growth and development. We also urge you to post your reactions and comments and engage with our guest for the evening, Mr. Anup Mathew, Senior Vice President and Business Head, Godrej Construction India. Thank you, Anup, for being on the show today.
Thanks, Mona, for having me on the show. It is indeed a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. A little brief about Anup. Anup Mathew heads Godrej Construction, one of the 14 business units of Godrej and Boyce Manufacturing Company Limited, which was established in 1897. Godrej and Boyce is the flagship company of the Godrej Group of companies. Anup has over 3 decades of work experience in the construction and real estate area and is fully responsible for the construction and real estate business of GNB. He has helped conceptualize, plan, develop, and maintain 7 million square feet of real estate assets and allied built environment in over 20 locations across India. Anup is also responsible for managing the vast portfolio of corporate real estate assets of the organization. He is committed to the cause of promoting productivity, improvement, and sustainable construction practices. Mr. Mathew is the chairman of the board of directors at the Institute of Lean Construction Excellence India, the ILCE. He is also the chairman of the technical committee for developing the CII IGBC net zero waste rating system. In the year 2012, Anup was awarded the highly prestigious Fulbright Scholarship. He completed his Fulbright program from the Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon University, Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania, USA. He has also a diploma from the Swedish Institute, Stockholm. In his spare time, which is, of course, way too little, I think, Anup enjoys sketching, painting, and listening to music, and also engages in spiritual practice. I know Anup for a few years now, over a decade, and I can vouch for him not being the typical construction person that comes across as a very macho and a very aggressive kind of a personality. I always found his bearing to be extremely anti the image that I had seen of construction executives. He's a very soft spoken person, a very suave and a very I always wonder how does he manage his sites if this is the way he conducts himself. So I always gave his example to the students. My students have benefited from his teaching, which was in the subject of corporate real estate at some point in time when I was at NICMAR. So welcome, Anup. I don't want to go too much into this because we all are really looking forward to listening to your experiences in learning and how you have brought yourself to at this level. We really feel that, and so I launch myself into the first question about your childhood and the key learnings that you remember from your childhood, and which one has stayed with you. These could be from any kind of recollection that you have, either formal or informal, through different people you came across.
Yeah. So thanks. And I kind of like that analogy which you gave about imaginer. As you said, the caterpillar doesn't know how it's going to transform into a butterfly, what it's going to look like. And I don't think the butterfly knows what had happened before. So there is it's an interesting analogy, and I think I can relate to it because when I was in my early schooling and college years, I didn't really think too much about, I wasn't very ambitious. I wasn't looking at becoming a business head or something of that nature. I just took life as it came, and quite honestly, I'm not complaining. I've been blessed in many ways, and I've really enjoyed the years that I've uh, you know grown from being uh, in the study and academic field to moving into a field of career where engineering on the project sides as well as subsequently handling larger portfolios. So, quite honestly, it's been a good experience. But I don't think I could have, if somebody were to ask me this at the beginning of my career, that this is how it's going to pan out. I don't think I could have, articulated it or thought about it the way it is. I don't think that's normally the case with many others. There are people who are very ambitious and are very clear about what they want to do, and I'm sure there are a lot of people like that, and nothing wrong with that. And I'm sure that gives a lot more clarity about what they want. But I was not quite like that, and I can go back to my schooling to give one anecdotal experience, and you said let it be from a childhood period. My parents were abroad in Saudi Arabia, and I was staying in a boarding school for my early schooling years. And while I was there, we had dormitories, and it was a very strict disciplinarian kind of an atmosphere. We had different age groups, different standards in different dormitories. And when I was in one of those middle dormitories, my dormitory master was one Mr. Nix James, who was a blind dormitory master. Now you would wonder, how is a blind person going to take care of a dormitory of maybe 25, 30 young children? How is he going to manage? And actually, when I look back, I found this incident quite astonishing, that somebody like him was in charge of a dormitory. Of course, he had an assistant in the form of a matron who was not blind, but he was in charge. And so, when I look back at that time, I saw several qualities in him, which I thought was quite amazing when I look back, over the years. Firstly, despite his handicap, he was in charge and made in charge, and obviously somebody thought him responsible enough and capable enough to manage, which I thought was very amazing, to entrust such a large responsibility of young children who were kind of in their bubbly years, wanting to explore and do everything, and he had to still be in charge. Another quality which I saw in him was his ability to, tell stories. He would captivate you because he was probably uh, challenged physically, but he was able to, cast almost like a spell. When he told a story, you would be engrossed and be in his story. And Saturday evenings, at that time televisions were not really something which we had in the boarding schools, and so Saturday evenings would be very often times when he would share a story or two, and the way he would say it would make it almost look like we were in the midst of that whole. So and I also realized that he was also very well versed, and he had in his room, and which was a site in itself. He had everything kept in its place. He had a gramophone. He was very fond of music. He had hundreds of records, and he would choose the song by going to that location and picking up the record that he wanted. And if you asked him for a song, he would go to that record and play it. Now, gramophones also required you to go to know which song. You had to know which place you would have to place the needle. Now, all this
Yes.
he did despite his handicap. And when I look back, I said that if he, despite his handicap, could handle all of that, I think there's a lot more that all of us can stop grumbling about, and certainly, deliver far more when we don't have some of those handicaps and
True.
disadvantages which were there. But I think he made the most of it, and that's, I thought, was a very interesting when I was incident which I could narrate. Not only that, he would teach us portions from the Bible at that time, and when we used to read in the chapel, he knew it by heart. We were reading from the Bible itself, and if he went wrong in the sentence, he would be quick enough to point out and say, "You're wrong. This is not the way it is written. It would be written like this." And so all of these were amazing to think of, that there is somebody who, despite his handicap, was able to show all these skills and capabilities.
This is something, I mean, I'm absolutely tongue tied to hear this. But yes, I mean, when you look back, you may have really seen a lot many things and learned. Because when we are there, when we are young, we only see how we can play a prank on such a person. But on the other hand, when we grow, uh, it's just amazing to see how people manage and around their their disability or deficiency, and get, I mean, this is a fantastic thing that must have stayed with you. On the show we have Gautam Pant, and he's saying hi to you. He's saying he's been your fellow mate, I think, at Fulbright. He says it's great to see you here, and I'm keen to listen to you. So there you are, Anup. You've started with such a wonderful memory from your childhood. I really appreciate this, and yes, boarding school does put in that discipline within oneself. It's really too good. Now I go to the next question. I'll really have to hurry a bit now,
Sure.
because I want to know what happened to you during higher education, when you did your civil engineering, and then you of course went in for a post graduation in construction management. And at that time it was also new. There was nothing like construction management or project management even being spoken about in the country in a big manner. So when you underwent that prescribed curriculum, can you therefore say that what you learned a good 30 odd years ago, you've been able to correlate most of what you have learned with what you have been doing, in your actual professional life?
So Mona, I think yes and no. I have I can't really. It will be unfair to say that all those learning which we did, even in the early schooling years, or in the college, or even in engineering college or management, was futile. I would say we built on it, but it was not enough uh, until you really started applying that knowledge at the workplace. And let me give you one simple anecdote once again, so to drive home the point. So when I took on my first assignment on a project site, I was a management trainee, and seemingly having all the engineering knowledge, but I was faced with a craftsman, a mason who was plastering a wall, and I knew what a plumb line was, but I really did not know that you could actually game the plumb line. And so I saw the way he was using his finger to adjust the plumb line so that he could finish his work for the day. It was not in plumb, and he just wanted to finish the work for the day. And it was subsequently that I realized that he had gamed me, and it was not really truly in plumb. And so it was something very basic, but you come out of engineering college knowing what to do with the plumb line, but probably not being able to see through a small trick which somebody on the other side who's more skilled and very years of experience as a mason, if he wants to game you, he can really game you. So I think while I when I look back, I did think that he pulled a fast one on me, but I also learned something, that technical understanding is not going to be good enough.
Now that's profound again, because there's so much of tacit knowledge that you actually pick up while you go through the motions of work on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's where the skilled craftsmen and all in India and the trades, they learn on the job, and they learn to do it faster and better. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I would like to also ask you, if you could find any irrelevance in your curriculum, like, okay, I needn't have learned that or something like that. Can you jog your memory a bit and tell us that some parts of the curriculum seem redundant, or maybe it could have been replaced with something else. Anything like that?
So in my, I think going back to the previous question and linking this, uh, it's inappropriate to say that you didn't put it to use at all, because the way you put it to use is not from day one. Maybe it is 3 years later you start applying that learning. So I don't think I would say that all that we learned was futile. But at the same time, I would say that. Some of the learnings, especially those which we had to do by rote and memory and formulas, I thought it was, even at that time, I thought it was a waste of time, and it was really not my area of interest. And subsequently, also in today's time, I think kids will certainly endorse that same view that why are we memorizing all of this? The academic fraternity has to adapt, and we have to be more intelligent than asking
Yes.
them to memorize things which they can easily access on the internet or other sources which are readily available. So it kind of is futile to really measure people on parameters which I thought was not relevant at that time, and I still think all the more reason now that it is not relevant. Fortunately, I was in an ICSE medium, and the emphasis on rote learning was far lesser. But it still required you to, apply some of the things which you had to learn. So history was interesting, geography was interesting, but when you put history and remember the dates, and if you don't remember the date, you'll get no marks. Then it is no fun.
Yes.
That kind of history, or for that matter, geography. Which crop grew in which country really didn't matter in life. You could always search it and find it through the book. But
So
at that time, it was made out to be too much, and I think people lost marks. And I think it was not the right way to assess competencies.
so true. Um, I know, and this is a particular refrain with all those who have this left brain thinking and who end up in science and all. They just can't handle the history and geography and civics of the world, you know. So there would be people like me who would be on the other side and say, "Oh my God, I don't need to know those formula." Anyway, that's on a lighter note. We have Sarita Zambre also who has joined us. Let us have more people raising their hands and saying that they are in on the conversation. So I go to the next question. And that is about your professional journey. Now we have seen this resume that I read does no justice to what you have actually put out there in terms of those buildings that we see when we pass Vikroli. I mean, those millions of square feet of fabulous buildings and really well maintained and stuff like that is it cannot do what I have said about you cannot do justice to what I have seen myself. So you have grown very steadily in the profession, and you are now the chief of a strategic business unit by itself. So in this professional journey, the span of management or the job role has definitely changed. And I would like you to focus on what are those competencies that you kind of just let go, and which others did you, retain? Or, and of course, the natural corollary to this question is which specifically did you add, and which of them like grew through training or you acquired them organically? So which ones you dropped, which ones you added, and which ones just came to you because of the increased span of management?
Yeah. So I think in the early years of uh, when I joined, it was predominantly technical knowledge which was more prevalent and more important, and I think it was needed at that time. So we were applying most of the engineering aspect in my early years in the field, in project management. And but subsequently, as I grew within the organization, and one of the things which is good in the organization where I work is that though I'm in the same organization, the nature of assignment changes. So I moved from predominantly a project based first few years and I enjoyed projects. Actually, that's it was giving me a lot of thrill. And I was told to move to another function, which is in engineering services and support functions. And it was like construction maintenance activities. And when I got that assignment, I was actually very disappointed. And I said, you know, I mean, what am I going to be doing? I mean, the thrill of finishing a massive project is very different, and it really excites you. And that's what I really, kind of enjoyed. And I was thinking it's only going to be some miscellaneous complaints and some problems with the factory building and some miscellaneous roof maintenance or leakages here and there. It was really very unappealing. But I learned far more in terms of challenges, in terms of the role which was there, in terms of the construction engineering services and maintenance role, than I did in my project, because my interface with customers was almost on a daily basis. And I did not know, in projects you're pretty much the king. You can decide what you want to do for the day, and you're in charge. But in the support function, the role was very different. You really did not know where the next crisis was. If it was rains, you would find that there could be problems with leakages somewhere. If it could be a problem with structural issues, it could be with an estate which is as large as this, more than thousands of acres. So there's always a problem somewhere or the other. And I found that I was not prepared for that. I just realized that I had to adapt and change very significantly, and a lot of my skills, which are interpersonal, got developed in that forum, because I had to deal with senior plant managers and manufacturing heads who were very demanding, and there were 20 odd industrial buildings. Everyone did not care about the other, but each one was equally demanding in meeting their objectives. And so I think that experience was very, very useful, which also subsequently I leveraged when I started a new business for our organization, in starting a leasing business.
Okay.
And that experience on interactions with customers helped me a great deal, which I don't think I would have got on a project assignment. So over the years, I think we've had to adapt and learn, and each job role brings with it its nuances, and the ability to adapt and learn from it, and use it, build on it, is something which I would say all of us, especially the youngsters, should be ready for. And job rotations, job enhancements are something we should accept, with that positive approach, rather than looking at it as a negative approach.
Okay, that's really fantastic. That's something, again, a new insight on how you thought they were lemons that were served and you made lemonade out of it. So fantastic. Now the next question, of course, again related to questions which are first, of course, I would like to ask that you have actually cut your teeth in your career in the construction project management domain, so to say. So I would like you to tell us which are those technical skills which are very, very important for all professionals in the built environment. So in construction, of course, which are those technical skills that if there are any of viewers who are actually doing engineering, which they must know and they must focus on, and those who are actually now middle level executives who may have signed up today, what would you tell them would be those technical skills?
Yeah. So I think on the technical skills, there are everything that you learned in the college. You would need to choose. For example, if you're specializing on project activities on the site, then your skills will require you to be more on the construction and project management skills. Whereas if you chose a career in structural design, your skills would be very different. And so what engineering college typically does for you is gives you the basic understanding on multiple technical skills, and you have
Right.
to choose the route which you want. So it is inappropriate to say that a particular technical skill is more important than the other. When you're in your early years in the engineering, I think you must be prepared to choose the stream which you want to build on, And so if you're going to be mostly predominantly on the field and that's what you like to be doing, then I think your skills on, right from project survey and land survey and building foundations, construction, that would become the domain. But if it is something which you want to build on in the on the tech, on the engineering side, on the engineering design side, then I think your skill sets will have to be more on the structural design, and then
Right.
probably you may need a post graduation as well. So in your formative early college years in engineering, you need to really be open to choosing the stream that you want to pursue as you go forward as well. But I think if you go to project management side, then I think understanding project management skills, software, project management on using software technology, these are basic and you require to build on it. But the software part is the easier part. I think the understanding the fundamentals of project management, the basics of construction project management is very, very essential for anybody who's on the field. And I think you really need to, dirty your hands and your shoes to really pick up those skills in the early years. And only then does it really help you in the long run. Because if you don't have those early formative years on the field, you'll always find a gap in your ability to grasp some of the decisions that you take subsequently. So
Right.
I think it is technical skills in the early years is important, but as you grow in the organization, your managerial skills become more important. And the middle management, I think the managerial skills of how to efficiently manage, how to plan, schedule, critical path,
Right.
those things become a
Right.
lot more. But as you go to the higher levels, like a CEO level, I think your leadership roles are more important. So the today I spend far lesser time on technical knowledge, and I think it's more about people and understanding market dynamics and being able to adapt to those business dynamics which are happening around us, and that
Yes.
takes up much more of your time. And interacting with stakeholders, customers, that's far more important today than it
Yes.
was maybe in the early formative years.
So true. So true. Yes. And now the next question, of course, is some key attributes that are desirable for any aspirants who want to really make it big, like you in construction project management. Which would which would be those one, two, three very very important attributes to have?
So, firstly, I don't think I'm that big, but I'm sure there are many other competent people. I feel all of us are dealt with a hand, and we have to try and make the most of it. I personally, I believe that do the best you can, and sooner or later, people will find you out if you're doing your job very well. So, really, I don't think whatever you're assigned, do it to the best of your ability, and I think that makes a lot of difference because. Uh, you know you know it's not appropriate to necessarily say only one or two skills because your job roles keep changing and your skills you need to keep on honing in the areas that you're assigned. So as I gave some of the examples earlier, each of them help you bring out different skill sets and competencies. And I think as you grow within the organization, you need to improve your skills and competencies across all these facets if you want to be a generalist. But if you want to be a specialist, that's also an equally important role. If you're a design specialist, or if you're somebody who's on project management side, there is enough of opportunities and room for growth even in those. So
Right.
I wouldn't want to put it into buckets, but it depends on which roles you are assigned,
Right.
and that should really do it to the best of your ability, and you will get more and more opportunities.
Yes. So I think my takeaway from this is that the one thing which is common, which runs through all those things in your career that you may encounter is that happy with what you're doing and do it to the best of your ability. Yeah. Okay. That's
Yeah.
very important because we tend to get a little impatient with things and begin to question why we are doing what we are doing. Yes. That's a very good insight you've given us. Now I come to competency-based education. And I would like to have your opinion on whether education should now be focusing on competency, or it should be also something more elevating as learning, opening your mind to different kind of things. And if you think that competency based education is relevant, and which skills should be part of the curriculum, so that students present themselves appropriately during recruitment, and how important is ethics and conduct and transparency, because those things, when we learn them in the classroom, seem pretty irrelevant to us. But do they need to be included at all in the very first place? So my questions are around this. Uh,
Sure. So, competencies are what all of us look for. So, in an interview, the early years, you may ask more technical questions, but as you rise in your own career, I think technical skills are expected. It becomes table stakes, and what you
yes.
really are looking for is what kind of an attitude does the person have? Is that person keen to learn? Is that person willing to work in teams? How often has he, in his or her accomplishments, what are the demonstrated capabilities that they have shown in terms of leadership or project management or whichever aspects that they have done? I think that becomes far more important than pure knowledge or a technical understanding of a subject. So I think and I know, and I may be doing this at the risk of negative comments, but most of them millennials, including my son, are quite impatient, and they would tend to, every 2 3 years, and they're restless. I'm not creating enough impact, so I want to do something else. I think you must hold back. It doesn't mean that you can't look for a new opportunity, but I think it will also be worthwhile to build on the competency to the point where you have acquired adequate uh, you know uh, competency, and then move on, rather than touch everything in a little bit and not deep enough. If you're not a specialist, you need to have adequate depth before you move to the next area of competency development. But softer skills, in my opinion, are far more important as we go forward. And as I said some time back, as you grow in your career, managerial skills become more important. Your ability to manage resources, manpower, people, that gets far more important in the middle level. And as you grow to take on a larger role, uh, leadership roles, then I think leadership capabilities are far more important. And I didn't understand the difference between management and leadership until I did the Fulbright program. Fulbright program was a leadership development program. While I've read some books here and there, I thought the two were pretty much the same. And I realized that leadership is a very different, it's a different thing altogether. Management is more about optimizing and resource, optimization, and how you're going to deal with different situations. Whereas leadership is a lot more about engaging with people, being able to spot opportunities, leading a team, envisioning, and inspiring the team. You really have to be having the ability to influence people, and your position can only help you to some extent. But eventually, I think leadership is far more than just being in a position. You really need to have people agree to see you as a leader, and be able to agree with your vision or your thoughts. And I think that's not easily achieved. So I think all these are important aspects. And also from a ethics point of view, I think it's very, very important. Most large corporates and even multinationals would really not, they have a zero tolerance for when it comes to non-ethical behavior. And so I think all of us, especially all the, I presume a lot of these are engineers and young engineers, we must make sure that our industry doesn't have some of the notoriety that it has unfortunately had in the past for various reasons. And I think we have to set that house right. We do a lot of great construction work, and quite honestly, the word construction and constructive, uh, uh, abilities are seen in a positive sense. But unfortunately, because of certain bad elements, the whole industry gets a bad name. We really need to set the house in order, and ethics and the way we manage, whether it's in the real estate or in the construction industry, we really need to set our flag very high in terms of ethics. If we don't do
That's
that,
so
I think
yes.
we will not really do justice, for the future generations as well.
That is so true. Yes. And talking about the future generation, my next question is also around that. See, there are a hell of a lot of problems. While we don't have so much time to for you to actually dwell on each one of them, uh, there are natural environment risks. There is this youth skill development when it comes to India. There is digitalization, which is actually making many job roles redundant and many new ones coming up. Then there is the problem of fair access to development, where there are so many elements in our society who are unable to access development equally like some others. Then, of course, there are other stakeholders and what they want. So, my question to you is, what can you what will really help to alleviate some of these problems when it comes to we who are skilled and who are who can give back? We need to develop those competencies. For some reason, I feel that in my past experience, that we send out cohorts of students, but they don't always necessarily have a conscience where they think that, okay, now that I'm here, I can do something in this position, no matter what that position is, even at the beginning of their career or midway into their career or at the end of it. So, which of these would you pick up as something that we need to build from the beginning as a competence, or be taught also perhaps in the academic institutions?
Yeah, so I think the world is adapting so quickly to, and has to adapt quite quickly to the changing scenarios all around. And I think what we did maybe learn in our engineering in those early formative years, a lot of it has either been modified or improved upon. And so to think that everything will remain the way it is, it's probably not going to be so. One thing I can tell all the students who are there is listening to this is, the learning never stops. You have to constantly keep on learning. And if you I thought, after engineering, I thought just done with it, and I'm, that's good enough. Then I got into management, and I thought, okay, that's it. Now there is no more to be done of the studies. And I think you can never really leave it behind. It will just constantly, you need to adapt and learn, because the world is changing very, very rapidly. And most of us over the last couple of years, because of what is happening, would have realized that there is a change which is very, very rapid around the world. And if we don't, adapt to it, somebody else will get there. And it's not about just the field or the industry that we are in. It's about all industries. And so, everybody has to, improve, and the pace of improvement is far, it's changing very, very rapidly. And so we need to constantly be on the vigil. If our competencies which we had honed earlier are not really going to be the thing of the future, then we will need to adapt and change once again, so that we are not becoming irrelevant or dated in terms of the skills which we have acquired in the past. And I think what you said about digitization and the kind of influence that those are having are going to take a toll. Some of it will certainly benefit, and I don't think it should be seen in a negative sense, because when computers came, many people said the same thing, that it'll take away jobs. And so it takes away some set of jobs, but it also opens up new opportunities for other sets of jobs. So I think we should look at it positively. There is an opportunity to maybe the skills which are not so, the ones which can be automated, or the skills which can be which are menial and the works which doesn't require the same level of intelligence can certainly be offloaded in various ways. But
Right.
we must be prepared, and I think all
Right.
engineers who are there today will have to keep on learning and adapting to the new regulatory requirements, to the new challenges which are happening on the fronts which are happening worldwide. So if we don't do it, some other country will start having an influence on our country. And I think as India, we must make sure that we don't lose out. We have a
True.
lot of development to go, and many years of development which is going to be required in a country like ours. And I think civil engineers and people who are contributing to the built environment have a great opportunity ahead. How we deal with it and how we build on it will also depend on how we take advantage of some of these technologies rather than looking at it as, in the negative that this is going to take away jobs. It will, some of them, but I think it also will offer new opportunities and improve some of the productivity problems that this industry is, faced with. And it is global problem. Overall, even in the best of countries, global average for productivity in the construction is only about 1%
Right.
growth year on year. So, which is very, very low as compared to manufacturing, and the overall average itself is 3.5% of the
Right.
GDP. So it's a very, very low productivity, and we have to improve. Whether it's by using technology, digital, or whether it is physical equipments, or using artificial intelligence. All of these will have to be seen. Of course, we'll have to be also sensitive to the human aspect of it, about job losses, and
Right.
government policies will factor in those aspects also as we go forward.
Right. So true. I think I mean, this is something that I think you are able to tell us because of your interest in productivity and lean, and so that resources can be, in fact, digitization can be used to reduce the wastage in natural resources and so on and so forth. I know for sure all the work you're doing in the ILCE as its chair. So I there's very little time left. Nidhi, you can take 5 minutes more, perhaps. But summing up, uh, from whatever Anup has told us, some key competencies. What remains with me this evening is going to be Mr. James, and how he managed this bunch of boisterous young boys, and what kind of competency he must have built within himself in order to be able to get this respect that he now commands over the decades that he must have dealt with all of y'all, and so many other cohorts that he led. So from there, you came to your boring days where you say those formulae is something that I could have easily, if there was, even in the exam papers, I remember some of my counterparts, professors used to give the log tables and used to give the formulae, because those are just a waste of time to remember in an exam where you have to actually come up with an analytical solution and not just get stuck in trying to figure out what I forgot, which was it delta, or was it a phi, or was it a pi, or something like that. So they did that, and I used to like that efficiency with which they made their question papers. So yes, that tends to be boring. That's a bygone thing that should now not be part of the learning when or teaching. That's one thing that remains with me. I also remember that you told us that whatever comes your way, just do it with a lot of sincerity, because that's going to help you to in some other way, in some other form, at some other point in time. And that's where your so-called maintenance job was not a bore. It actually helped you now, where you're leading this whole SBU, and you understand customers well. So, of course, you dwelt upon the digitization, and not to again to meet it fair and square. But now we have so many questions coming in. I have to thank you for your candid responses, and I have to just give it over to Nidhi. Thanks so much, Anup, for coming here, and Nidhi, over to you.
Thank you, Mona. Nidhi, you're on mute.
Nidhi, you're on mute.
Thank you, ma'am. I think I'm audible now. It was
Yes, yes.
indeed a very interesting and wonderful session. We have received a lot of questions, and I would like to pick a few considering the time in hand. I would also
Sure.
like to thank the audience for their very motivating comments and compliments. That certainly pushes us to keep it going. So we will be taking the first question. I think the first question that we have received is from Mr. Gautam. So he says that how has your working changed post Fulbright experience? What is your advice for leaders in the built environment space?
So, firstly, Gautam, it's a pleasure to connect with you once again. I didn't think you would be on watching this today, but I have fond memories of my time which we spent in the Fulbright program. Gautam was part of that, and yes, to answer your question, it was a very memorable experience, the Fulbright program. I think it's very unlike many other programs. And I think the good part was that it allowed us to travel the length and breadth of US, meet with people across various industries, and engage with like-minded professionals from various parts of the world. And that experience was really very beneficial when I came back, because within a year, when I came back, I was not heading the business at that time. Within a year of coming back, I think I got a enhanced role, which is the role which I had. So I think some of the competencies and understanding which we gathered in that program went a long way in my ability to take this leadership position, which Fulbright offered. I think it gives you a far better breadth, to the and depth to the kind of understanding and leadership. And I think that's helped me a lot. I can't say enough about the benefits of that program. It's really a blessing to have gone through it. Incidentally, I got the Fulbright program, and it was my brother's wedding in US. So otherwise, I would have to take a visa and land up in US. I didn't have to do that because I was a Fulbright scholar at the same time. So it was quite a chance, but a blessing when I landed up there at the same time. So Gautam, thanks for that question, and I should catch up with you sometime. It's been a long time.
Thank you, Mr. Anoop. Thank you, Gautam.
Actually,
We'll move
Gautam
to the
has been,
next question. Yeah.
sorry, Nidhi, just on a lighter note, Gautam has been my colleague also when I was at the RICS, and I could rely on him for so many things. I guess that Fulbright leadership is something really, a game changer and a life changer, and whatever you may want to call it. But yes, Gautam was an asset.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll move to the next question now. The next question is from Sandeep. He's asking, according to you, what percentage of the construction gains are accrued through the use of lean construction?
Yeah, thanks, Sandeep, for asking this question. I think it's a very relevant question. See, many years ago, when we were just getting into the industry, project management seemingly was, with using software technology, was the thing of the future. And we all were very keen to just use the computer and do some sort of planning on that. And that excitement which was there, I can recollect, and I saw the benefits of you learning those skills, and the benefits of being able to understand planning and scheduling and budgeting and all of that which we learned in the construction management program. I think lean is going to be something in that direction. It is not necessarily, you can't attribute everything to lean, because there are many things that we do in construction where the benefits may not necessarily be only attributed to one activity. And so lean may not be, you can't measure it and attribute it only to this. But to simply put it, lean is about, minimizing waste, wastage in time, wastage in material resources, in any kind of waste which is there, it tries to minimize that. And Lean, if you read the latest Construction World, we have come out with a full issue focusing on Lean construction. It will be of interest, and if you reach out to ILC or to me separately, I'll be happy to share far more. I think what is going to happen in the future as we go forward is like we are going to be as professionals, and in ILC we have companies like L&T, Tata, and many others who are very large corporates, Shapurji, Afcons. So we are all slowly going to start for students who have an understanding of Lean. So we are working with IIT Madras to create course curriculum which can benefit the academia in various other places, including some of the leading management institutes, construction management institutes. And I think this awareness will be something in those lines where people will start asking, what do you know about Lean in the years to come? And so we are putting up NPTEL videos, which independently people can do certification programs, which IIT Madras is curating the content. And so we will find this becoming increasingly a mainstay in the kind of expectations that leading construction organizations will ask in the years to come. So I think we should be prepared for it, is what I would suggest to all the youngsters.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Anup. I also have one question. I think it's just a quick one. Is if you can,
Sure.
I want to know if BIM and other advanced softwares be the way forward in ensuring sustainable construction. According to you, are they must-haves or simply good to know competencies? What do you feel about this?
So I think BIM is grossly underused in India today because competencies and skills, and we ourselves are, trying to build these competencies. It doesn't happen overnight, and we have seen this similar thing happen with software technology and project management software. It's a chicken and egg. Firstly, you need to have projects to deploy it on, and you need to have the software and the competencies and the skills in. And so BIM is something on those lines. I think is going to be very, very critical in the days to come. What we did with drafting in the conventional days, and today what we can do with AutoCAD, or any other similar software, is productivity has gone up significantly. Your ability to visualize and plan and schedule is far better with BIM. So I think Lean. We talk about Lean, but these are tools which are there, for collaborative planning, BIM, usage of technology such as BIM. All of these will go a long way, and I think the students of today have to be prepared to learn these skills. Whether when it comes to sustainable development, a lot of our green building designs are on paper before we get down to executing it on the field. A lot of the design calculations and sustainability aspects are built into the BIM model. So it is something which will increasingly gain traction. And I think students of today should be prepared to learn and up their competencies when it comes to these kind of skills as well.
Sure, sure, sure. I think we are getting a lot of response to today's session, and there are some great compliments. And I think Suzanne is also writing. My son went through GA Tech Chem E, and he had many open book exams. So she is really mentioning what they are going through, and she is also complimenting ma'am, saying that we have a great guest today, this evening. So thank you so much, audience, for engaging with us today. This evening is a very great one. Before we close the session, please click on the link shared in the chat box to enable us to make Imaginal Talk episodes even more relevant to you. With this, we have come to the end of this episode All those viewers who would like to have a certificate of attendance may please leave their email addresses in the chat box. For all those who have missed the session today, the talk will be available on VSAR Imaginal Talk series on Learning and Skills Development YouTube next week. Please like, follow, and subscribe to the Imaginal Talks on YouTube and Imaginal Blogs on Vayati Systems website. Thank you, viewers, for joining us today, engaging with us through comments and questions, signing out, and looking forward to have you once again in the next episode with yet another distinguished guest. Bye for now, and stay with Imaginal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Nidhi.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.